What if you could predict your future? Does this seem too good to be true? It can be done. All it takes is using your mind to give thought to how you want your future to look. What is it that you want to see? How do you want to be? And how do you want your life to go? These questions can be answered by you. This isn't about manifesting, it is about creating. If you want to be healthier, speak to your future healthy self and tell her, what are you doing today to help her be healthier? You want to be happier? What is it that you can tell your future self you are doing today to create a feeling of being happy? Thinner, richer, more of something, or less of anything at all? Dear future self, here's what I am doing today to support you. In this podcast, Dear Future Self, based on the book by the same name, author Susan Axelrod, the confidence coach, interviews women who understand the benefit of speaking out what they want for their lives. Why is this important? Because speaking to your future self supports you here and now. What would you say to your future self?
Hello, friends. This podcast truly delights me. I had fun writing the articles. I had fun bringing the articles together to create the book. But I love these podcast conversations with women talking about what was on their minds, what they did about it, and who they became as a result of taking that action. That is my Dear Future Self thesis. You can inform your future if you realize that you can literally speak to your future self. Today, I am delighted to bring on my friend and guest, Lisa McCorry Hall, to have this conversation. Lisa, hi, it's great to see you.
Hi, Susan. I find the whole Dear Future Self thesis so interesting because, well, for one thing, there's a story which I can't tell correctly, but it's something about a guy who says, geez, I would love to become a doctor. But if I go back to school now, I won't be a doctor until I'm the age of 50. And so what's the point? And somebody else says to him, but, well, in 6 years, you're going to be 50. That's happening one way or the other. So really, do you want to just be 50 doing what you're doing, or do you want to be 50 and be called doctor? And although I don't think you actually got to the reason I'm talking to you today, it is because of going back and following up on educational opportunities.
I mean, honestly, I literally have chills with that story because it absolutely depicts my Dear Future Self thesis. And it is the reason I really wanted you to come on. And I really want to thank you for, being willing to have this conversation. So many years ago, Lisa, you'll fill in the dates. Many years ago, I remember I was having a conversation with you, Lisa, and you said to me, I'm thinking about going back to school. And I immediately said, oh, that's wonderful. I can't really remember the details. You'll have to fill in, but I'm wondering if maybe you never finished your degree and you really wanted to do that. And I remember you saying however old you were at that time. And I remember this conversation so well, along the same lines. Well, I call it time is passing anyway.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Time is passing anyway. This is a thesis I use in my confidence coaching all the time. And whether you do it or don't do it, time is going to pass.
Right.
So I really, really would like to ask you to share the story of how you came to higher education at a later age.
Okay. I took a long and winding road. I graduated high school, and a whole other story, I got married shortly thereafter, and I started college that fall. And I guess what's important to the story is that I am now a recovering alcoholic. At the time I was drinking, and there was a beer and wine bar on campus, and I never made it to class.
Oh my gosh.
I would stop and say, "Oh, just have a glass of wine before class," and I'll have a second glass of wine. Well, now I'm late for class. Never. So I didn't do too well that time, that go around of school. And then, well, I divorced and I took a class here and took a class there. And I always had the desire to further my education. And it took really a long time. There are different reasons to get a degree. And for a long time, I pursued educational goals with the idea that it would help me with a career. And then I sort of fell into a career. And when I went back to school that time, I thought, I don't need that. I don't need the education to further my career now, because my career was going very well and I had a very deep knowledge of the business I was working in. So at that time, doing a lot of thinking about it, I realized that part of the reason that I continued to want to get educated was because, well, two reasons. One was that I always felt somewhat inferior. I always felt kind of like a fraud, which I guess is a thing. I think there's a whole
Imposter syndrome.
Yes, yeah. So I felt that way, and I felt very intimidated around other people who had degrees. And then but also what I realized was what I had missed, what I was lacking, and unfortunately what I could never really achieve, was the social experience of going to college and living away from home. And all of that people talk about. Everybody, they have lifelong chums that they met in college, and all the experience and how it broadened their social horizons, and they found people different from themselves. And I realized, I guess in my 50s, that no matter how many degrees I might get, I wasn't going to get that. So the combination of knowing I couldn't achieve that and knowing I didn't need the education at that point for my career, I dropped it. I think I've been to 4 or 5 different colleges over time.
Oh.
So that was, I guess, the penultimate time I went to school. And then I retired. And so I still have this nagging feeling that I feel inferior. I feel like I don't have the education. I don't have the view, the world view that a person with more education would have. And as you know, we're spending our winters in Puerto Rico, which is a lovely tropical paradise, but you can only lay in the sun for so many hours a day, especially if you've had skin cancer, which I have had. So it was actually, I hate to say it out loud because people think, oh my goodness, what a wonderful life. Yes, it's a wonderful life, but I actually got a little bored. So I said, well, what can I do? And this one winter in Puerto Rico, I spent basically on Pinterest, pinning every possible thing, pinning new cars I could buy, different colors I could paint my living room, on and on and on.
So I have to stop you. I'm like, I don't remember this part of the story. I'm like, I have chills over my whole body. So this is so great. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so, and as you know, my sweetie, Dennis, who supports me in all my endeavors, and I would say to him, geez, I think maybe when we get home, we'll paint the living room. He said, well, okay. I think maybe when we get home, I might want to buy a Porsche Boxster because I've always wanted one. Well, okay, we could look into that. And I said, maybe I could go back to college. Maybe I could, attend one of those online schools. And that one, he said, yes, do that, Lisa. So we got home and I decided I don't really want a Porsche Boxster, and really the color of my living room is just fine. But why not go back to school? And particularly because doing online classes, I could do it in the winter in Puerto Rico. And it would make good use of my time, and it would help me finally get the degree that had forever eluded me. And I guess that's when I was talking to you when we met for lunch or whatever. And I said, I think I'm going to go back to school. And I should plug SUNY Albany because I went through Empire State, which is fully online.
Okay.
And it was, well, it worked. It was good.
Yeah. So wait, before we get there, so honestly, I really can't say enough how, you know me, Lisa, and you know how much I'm about taking action. You know how much I'm about taking one step towards. But I'm also about visualization. It's informed my life since I was a young teenager and certainly my career. And I think you said you spent a whole winter like creating a Pinterest board. And what I want to bring out about that, that's so important here, is that in that sort of casual fun thing, what happened? You actually gave yourself permission. This is called, in coaching, it's like self permission. Oh, maybe I'll get a Porsche. Maybe I'll paint my living room. Maybe I'll get my degree. That exercise, I get, of course, Pinterest is a vision board online, but I've used vision boards for decades and many people do. But I love how much you just opened up and imagine, my tagline, imagine the possibilities, that you could do this and you could do that. What is it that I really want? I asked myself, and also I just want to say here before we even go on, you already had your whole career and were retired.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that is such an important part of this story. So, you already did this. You had a great career. You worked for a great company. You made a pretty good living or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
And you enjoyed what you did. But then, but still personally, deeply, you had this feeling, this sensibility that you still wanted, you still needed that in your life.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's a very important point, because yes, I was retired. So, here's a cute little story though. So I did graduate. If we skip sort of to the next chapter of the story, I graduated. I earned my bachelor's degree this past May. And my 3 daughters and I think 4 of my 7 grandchildren came down to watch the graduation ceremony. And it was very, very lovely. And then we sort of have a tradition, when the kids graduate from preschool, we go out to Friendly's for ice cream to celebrate. So we went out to Friendly's with ice cream and celebrated. And then fast forward to, I don't know, sometime in July or August, my 6-year-old granddaughter was talking to her mother, and she said, out of the blue, "Mom, what do you do after you get your college, after you graduate from college?" And Megan didn't think much of it. She, just a general question. Megan said, "Well, you get a job." And they said, "So is Grandma going to get a job now?"
Oh my gosh.
I think it's just, I think it's a little different spin for my story, because I didn't do it in furtherance of my career. I did it for, as you pointed out, totally personal reasons, totally.
And I, over these years, I think did it take you 2 years?
I think when we checked, I think I started in the fall of 21. I think
Yeah.
we decided, and I graduated in the spring of 24. So,
right. So almost, into 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And during that time, I know, we were in touch. It wasn't easy. It was interesting. It was fun. It was rewarding, but it wasn't easy. There was a lot of studying to do, papers to do. You had to still overcome, can I do this? Am I smart enough? Even though you had worked a great career, you still had to overcome, some other mental obstacles, perhaps, to get to the accomplishment of graduating and getting the Friendly's ice cream sundae, for the celebration.
I found too that there was a psychological hurdle. I don't know whether it's a hurdle, but what I learned about myself, which I knew on some level, is maybe twofold, is that I crave positive reinforcement. I'm a good student because I crave having the teacher say, "Good job, Lisa." And I crave getting A's. I want to do really well, which also sort of becomes an issue that I had to try to get over when I didn't do really, really well.
Yes.
And although I really always did very well. But I really, in the beginning, I was trying so hard that I was getting too far into the weeds, I guess. So as an example, there was one class, and the thing that we had to do was, she said, pretend that you're writing, well, she didn't say pretend, but if you were writing a paper on this subject, pick a subject. If you were writing a paper on it, do the research and write up an annotated bibliography, which I didn't actually know what that was at that moment. So I looked it up. Okay, now I know what an annotated bibliography is. But I misunderstood and thought we were supposed to write the paper. So I write a whole, I don't know, 5-page paper. It wasn't tremendously long, and I'm not used to, I was fairly new at writing papers because, as
Yeah.
you know, I worked in finance, giving
Right.
numbers, but
In
words.
columns and rows.
Yeah, spreadsheets. So anyway, so I wrote the 5-page paper, and with all of the work I did through college, I really sweated over it, and revise and edit and revise. And I turned it in, and she wrote back and she said, well, this was a good paper, but you were supposed to do an annotated bibliography. And that was on a Saturday. And I remember just being devastated. She said, well, I'll still give you a B because, you obviously tried to do something.
Yeah.
And I was just so devastated. A B? So then I went back and I did the annotated bibliography, and I sent her that the next day. And I said, it's not even about the grade, although partially it was. I said, but really, I have to know how to do an annotated bibliography. And that was the assignment.
Right.
So here it is, whether or not you change my grade, but here you can let me know if I did this right. So then I did get an A. But
Yeah.
it was not the first time, or the last, I guess, that I misunderstood the assignment and did more.
This is a very interesting point of confluence. The confluence that you're a grown-ass woman, you were literally had a great career in finance, and you had retired, and yet you can come here and say, I realized I didn't understand some things. One of the bases of all my output, Lisa, is to support our young professionals. So I have several people I started working with when they were in their 20s. Now they're in their mid 30s. So now I just said to one of them this morning, I'm sorry, but you do realize you're going to be looking at middle age in 5, 6 or 7 years. There's like 10 years behind you now of young professionals. And he was like, that hurts. But anyway, this is a very interesting point that anyone who's on the younger side of life might listen to this and assume that someone who's retired, they've had a good career, they're financially secure, they, have a love relationship and family and grandchildren, all the things, that you would still be unsure and not understand an assignment. So the thesis here is Dear Future Self. And it really comes up for me, what I said to you kind of in the green room before we got started, which is you are literally now the future self of the person in, before fall 2021, you had to go through this thinking process, the Pinterest board, that, imagining the possibility. Then you had to apply and get in, there's all this process involved. And all that time, you may or may not have been thinking of Susan's thesis, Dear Future Self, but you were doing this for what? Because you had this feeling and sensibility that you still wanted that.
I was still trying to overcome my feelings of inferiority for having never earned a degree.
Yeah, you are that future self now.
And it mattered. It matters. I am a different person now. I really do feel I have a much broader way of looking at the world. I majored in sociology. So that's where my degree is.
Yeah.
And I mean, with the politics going on now and all sorts of things going on in the world, I can just apply a broader thought process to understanding what's going on. And I love it. I love it. And it's also, I hesitate to use the word addictive, but it is something that I'm in the process now of applying for graduate school to get my master's, because the more I've learned, the more questions I have, the more areas I want to look into. And I know you told me that your mother had audited classes at Skidmore, so I did think about doing that. And I'm not sure, I haven't really delved psychologically into why this is, but for me, I need to know, to have a goal and then to have something at the end, a degree.
Right. You never have to worry why. You don't have to know psychologically. Just go apply for your master's, do the work, keep showing us that, older people have agency, and that, excuse me for saying, but you must be a certain age because you are retired, and that it's great to have reason to have a master's, to think broadly, to think expansively, to be one of the people in the world who can understand that we have different perspectives and different points of view. And, I cannot encourage you enough to go get that master's degree. I honestly can't. And when you're ready beyond that to go get the PhD, you shared with us your past as an alcoholic in addiction. That would indicate, maybe you have addictive tendencies. I mean, if you have to be connected to something and, doing something in that way to speak to that soul part of you or the way your brain works, let it be education, but let it not be do to you what addiction does to us, which is doing something bad for us, knowing that it's bad for us and doing it more, and so on and so forth, right? The trauma that underlies addiction, but such that it shouldn't become a bad thing for you, but such that you stay healthy and well and balanced and educated and show your children and grandchildren and all the rest of us the blessing and beauty and benefit of this. And I really didn't know this. I knew that you had flirted with continuing education, but I didn't know that you were in the process till now, till you just said. And so here we are once again at the inflection point. And I would ask you, what do you want to say to your future self now?
Oh, well, I'm not sure if this answers your question or not, but I have been told that sometimes ageism is a factor when applying to schools. And I understand that. I definitely understand the idea that, the school's making money, but the school's job is to educate people who can go out and make the world a better place, broadly speaking. And so I've heard that they don't necessarily like to admit older people because what's left in our lives to do. So I have to write an essay for my application for the master's degree. And I was thinking about it, and I think honestly, I don't know what's in my future. But I know if I continue going to school, if I continue broadening my education and broadening my knowledge of the world, if any opportunities come along, and I don't know what they are, but if some sort of opportunity comes along, I will be better prepared. I will be ready to say, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can write the article or be on the podcast or whatever it is. And so, I think it comes down to growth. It's all about growth. So dear future self, I'm going to keep growing so that I'll be a more vibrant flower in the future.
When we were talking before we came on, I said to you, I'm so lucky. I love my life. I'm so lucky. I feel so lucky. This moment that you just shared with us is like the completest moment for me because you are literally doing that now. Lisa, I made a decision many, many years ago to not, seek out the TED stage and to be okay with who I am and what I had and whomever it was who was intended to hear me. I don't track analytics for my podcast. Don't tell anyone. I don't know what my analytics are. I don't know if 2 people listen or no people listen or all people listen. I'm not doing it because of this. I do what I do every single day because of this conversation that I'm having with you, because without a doubt, I can tell you with 100% certainty, there will be people who hear this conversation and become inspired, perhaps even it will become an inflection point for them to do something different going forward. I cannot say, you knew my mother, and she was so erudite and really had intellectual curiosity. I've talked about this quite a bit. And she had book clubs. She died when she was 85 from she was very, very healthy and well. She had multiple book clubs that she attended, and
I remember she, I guess, volunteered at the library.
She was a volunteer at the library. She was she received a lifetime a volunteer award from the League of Women Voters. In her 80s, she was facilitating political debates for elections. She was the go-to person for that. So I cannot say how much I love this. The fact that you chose sociology to expand your knowledge base, to expand your understanding of the world, to expand, the human interaction. My own daughter was a sociology major. I love this. I love that you would fight ageism in this way with an essay applying to a master's degree that, for all I know, if you stick with me, could become a blog post or an article, or, this is the way of the world. So I absolutely love this. Dear future self, keep growing. If nothing else magical happens, you are without a doubt showing me and your family members, your friends, people who know you and love you, people who meet you in the street, the younger students in college, although Empire State is they have a lot of older students, non-traditional
It's actually a very wide range.
Right. They have non-traditional students. You're teaching them, you're showing them. I mean, I just can't say how meaningful and how deep and how important this is. So it's a master's degree. Would you continue in sociology?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
What has been interesting to me lately, and maybe partially politically driven, but the whole idea of capitalism and the effects that capitalism, which is an economic thing, how it informs society. And I've been listening to some podcasts and the idea that now we're in the stage of late capitalism. So how would it evolve from there? And because it doesn't seem to really serve the great most of society anymore. It serves a very few. So.
Well, if we want to go there, I could say the idea of an ism is patriarchal. It is patriarchal, the idea of an ism. So does capital serve us? Yeah, capital serves us. We evolved as a, financial or, society with economics at play. Perhaps being in late capitalism, if that's, the indication, then we begin to talk about post-capitalism. Now, If you want to have that conversation, I'll have that conversation in the confidence zone with you anytime. But I love that you're bringing it up. You're saying things out loud. One of the things about being a mature woman, as I call myself, dare I say a crone, as I call myself, is we're not worried any longer. about, being 30 or 35 or even 40, even 45, we're no longer worried about offending. We're worried about the future. We're worried about our children and grandchildren. We're worried about the environment, the climate, and human relations and human discourse. And so they can kind of talk about how old we are or what we're going to be doing with the degrees they give us. But it is our wisdom gleaned and gained that is going to make a difference, because also in the intergenerational, the crossover of you being at whatever age you are, interacting with younger generations, that is the healthiest and most well way going forward, where we can learn from them, but they also can learn from us. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And to your point about as we get older, there's really a great freedom in it. There's freedom, and there's also, and say what you will about younger generations, there is an implied respectfulness. I find that a lot, that people will defer to me just because I'm the old lady.
Yeah, that's my mother did experience that. I'm very moved. I've known about Empire State College for many years, being, from the
It's
area.
a university now. Now it's Empire State University.
Empire State University, thank you. And I'll tag them in the show notes. In the past, I have looked, I myself have a story. I started a master's degree. I never did complete it. I've thought about it myself. I don't have the same story as yours. Mine is a little bit different. But at this point, Lisa, it is a big financial investment to get a degree. And you obviously feel that this financial investment is worthwhile for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it's nurturing my soul.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language.
I know.
Come on.
But really, that phrase actually fits very well for what I'm doing. I really am, listening to where I feel I need improvement, and then getting it, working towards it. And we don't travel as much as we used to, so there's
right. That is.
And as you mentioned, I did have a decent career, and I do have some retirement savings. So what else am I going to spend it on?
What else better than edification and education and, these younger people seeing you, the old lady, and being respectful, like you said in class. I mean, come on. Everything about this is fantastic. This podcast is based on my third book called Dear Future Self. But that was my fourth book, actually. This is my fifth book called In Soul Alignment, which is what you just said, that you're doing this to really be in soul alignment. The reason that you wanted to complete your degree does not exist. I don't know how you say you got there, and you even said, I do feel differently now. You even said, I did it for a reason, and I do feel differently now. Now going forward, now you're about further edification. Now you see the benefits. And also, education is expensive. And that's a problem in our capitalist society, So everybody doesn't have the benefit of education. So the fact that you do now, you're literally using that in your everyday conversations. If you were walking in the park and you met a young person and got started talking, you might talk about the benefit of education, but also alternative ways to achieve those goals. Like for you, the alternative came like 25 years later.
Right. And also thanks to the ability to learn online.
Yeah.
Because we were going to be in Puerto Rico, and that was one of the issues that I had to overcome, was just to find out, well, if I want to go back to school, how do I do that when we're in Puerto Rico for 4 months out of the year?
Yeah.
And so, but it worked out. I mean, it worked out that I would do one class in the fall for the fall semester, because I would be busy with, all the holidays and the family. And then we would go to Puerto Rico, and I could take a full course load. I would take 3 classes over the winter. and then
Mm.
another class in the summer. And, I just kept chugging along.
I
But
just
it's
kept.
just, it's so interesting. There's so many interesting classes, and even
Mm.
some courses that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen, but my mentor said, well, do this class. You'll like this one. And it was all really good. It was all interesting stuff.
Oh my God, that's so good. Thank you so much for this. I'm so glad that you knew Mom, and thank you so
Yeah.
much for this opportunity, because her like spirit is like, flying around us right now on her broomstick. And because she took, I don't even know how many, for a decade, maybe she took, she audited classes, and the professors loved her because she always had that intellectual curiosity to read. That's what you just showed. You
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
oh, everything is interesting. And so, yeah, that's the way Mom was also. And then she loved interacting with the younger students. In her case, as you said, it was on the Skidmore College campus, and they deferred to her. And she would take some professors, like every course they taught, she was in. They'd be like, "Hi, Terry," Oh, that's so good. Lisa, I just can't thank you enough. First of all, you shared deeply here today. You revealed some things about yourself because, in your mature age, you're okay revealing things about your past. That was very important for us to hear, because there are people who are in addiction today or who have struggled with addiction in their past, and they're listening to you be like, holy shit, what? I mean, really, that is, of course, you know how I feel about that with you. I'm so grateful that you're willing to speak about that openly and freely. And I really want to say thank you for that. And then the other part of your story, how you worked, but even still, even as a high professional today in this safe space, you can reveal or share, there was just this thing that I just felt like a bit of an imposter, and now we can begin to heal that, because I believe in retro healing. Now you know what you know. It's not that you were an imposter. It's just that you didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So you created that opportunity for yourself. That whole thing about how you spent time, creating this Pinterest board, asking yourself, what do I want? What do I need? Okay, you did have financial resources. That was a blessing. You lived prudently to be able to have resources and have a retirement. You worked hard to have a retirement, and this is how you're choosing to spend it, which to me is amazing. As a philanthropy advisor, I say, make your money, show your values. And I'm doing the same, the money, whatever money I do have, I'm not buying things on Amazon. I'm gifting it away. I give money to women, who are doing great things in support of their work if they need it. So, oh my God, this was so good. So we'll have another conversation after your master's degree is completed.
It'll be a few years, but yes.
In a few years, we'll still be here. We'll still be here doing this.
Who knows what the technology will be by then?
I know, it's amazing to think. I'm completely, utterly inspired, really, truly, deeply. My future self is listening to this conversation, Lisa. She is listening. And I hope for whomever is out there, we've had a couple of people live with us listening to this today. I want to thank you for joining us today. Crystal is here again. She was with me earlier. I did a program earlier today, and she says we are never too old to learn new things.
It's just thinking too that your future self is my age.
That's so good. You're right. You're absolutely right. It is. It's inspiring to me. Like literally, I can feel it in chills on my whole body. So thank you very much, my friend. It's great to see you. I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
On a hard won, well-earned achievement.
It feels good. It feels real good.
It's so good, Lisa. It's so good. And I promise you, we will stay tuned to your story. So take
And
good
well,
care.
thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share my story. And, hopefully we will inspire some others too.
I have no doubt at all that we will. All right. I'll see you soon. Take
All right.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.